Hello, my name is Michele, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. Laura Licursi is the founder and owner of Elite Virtual Assistants, a virtual staffing agency that helps busy professionals like all of us listening go from busy and overwhelmed to productive by helping them delegate work that's keeping them in their business instead of working on their business. So really relieving that stress so that we can now work on the business. In our time together today, Laura and I are going to hit some of the following topics surrounding hiring a VA, which is short for virtual assistant. First, we're going to talk about what a VA is, how it's different than an OBM. I know lots of acronyms here, but I promise we're going to make sense of it. We're also going to chat about hiring from an agency perspective versus straight freelance, when to know if the timing is right, can you afford them, how to onboard them, and what you need to have in place to do it all well. I have many VAs and they help support me run my business. So listen in to see when might be the right time for you to bring on help in this area. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hey, Laura, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Michele. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I am excited to have this conversation all about virtual assistants and hiring and getting help. And, it's something that in the interior design industry, in any industry, that we can always use. So thank you for being here to have this much needed conversation.
Yes, I'm excited. It's my world. So
I know exactly. That's why I brought you on. Laura, just before we get started, share with us a little bit about what you did prior to starting an agency for virtual assistants.
Well, I was in corporate America until I had my first child, my daughter, back in 97. And I just knew for me personally, I wanted to continue working, but I wanted to be home. And back then, remote work wasn't really a big thing. But I started working as a virtual assistant really before it was a thing. So it was in 1997. I answered an ad in the paper. I started working for a wholesaler, like doing face-to-face appointments for him, scheduling, mapping out where, like his route, where he was going to go, setting up seminars. And that just kind of snowballed into, I stuck within that industry for years. And then I I'd say maybe about 2011, 2012, got interested in like email marketing. And I started doing things for clients that, on that route. And then in 2015, my kids were older at that point, and I just was really ready to really take on more of a leadership role, I guess you could say. And that's when I started the agency, was 2015. So
I love that. So, I came home in 1998 when my youngest was a year. My youngest was born in 97, and I wanted to be home. And then I started my business in 2000, trying to find a way to work from home and make some money and not go back into corporate. So similar. And, the internet was all very new back then. I mean, it was barely around. It was a big deal just to be able to check email in some cases. Right?
Google didn't come out till 98. So yeah.
Right. I know I almost can't remember that world. I have to really stop and think about the time before. I remember getting our first cell phone, and it was a bag phone. I remember taking my husband's Jeep to the dealership and having a phone mounted like a handset in the Jeep, because that's what we had back then. It was the latest. It was like the thing.
Right.
We did one that was in a bag so that we could carry it. And his was hardwired into that Jeep Grand Cherokee. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was his Christmas present anyway, all that to say, I came home the same kind of way you did and thought what can I do? I don't want to go back into corporate. Well, for me, I had two small children at home at that point, and started my business from home doing custom window treatments and in the interior design industry as a whole. And it's so interesting because now people can do that from home through the internet. Like you don't even have to, you just do it through Etsy or something. You don't even have to meet people. And the virtual assistant world has exploded and changed. All of these things have shifted and changed. And I love how you have been so in it that you have morphed your business over the years to keep up with what's happening, but also, gosh, it's just more exciting to keep doing different things and growing with it, right?
Yes.
My business doesn't look, I am now in my 22nd year of business, and it doesn't look anything like it did when I started. But it's all within the same industry, and I am loving it and enjoying it and growing all the time. And you've done the same thing.
You have to be able to roll with the changes and roll with the times. So
exactly. What's that book? Who Moved My Cheese?
That's so funny. I just read that again last year. It's nice to have a little refresher on those.
I know it, right? And who would have ever thought that a book like that from all those years ago would still be relevant, so important today, right? I'll make sure I put that in the show notes. So, Laura, tell us about the business that you have today, and then we're going to open up our conversation about virtual assistants, the difference between that and an OBM, an online business manager. We're going to talk a little bit. I know you and I had some pre-conversation about when to hire, how to hire, whether you should go freelance or agency. And we got all the conversation to have. But tell us about what your business looks like today.
So today, which like you said, it's changed so much from the beginning, obviously, but as we've grown, we found certain positions that were really important to keep everything running smoothly. So, we work with all different industries. A big part of our client base is attorneys. So, we specialize in legal and executive assistants and then digital marketing assistants. So we could do email campaigns and social media management, like I said, for all different industries. And then the way that the business though is structured is, we've got a team of VA subcontractors that are highly vetted. It's not easy to get on our team. So, we have that piece of it. We have a salesperson now, which is somebody new that I've added this year. She's been with me now just about 6 months. And then we have our relationship managers. And, so they manage the entire relationship between the client and the virtual assistant. So there's always somebody there, checking in with you, making sure that, everything is running smoothly. Because what I found, especially in the beginning, is when you don't hear from a client and you can't get a hold of them, that's not a good thing. There's usually something wrong. Either, something's wrong on the personal side of things, or there's something wrong with the relationship, but nobody really knows how to approach it sometimes, right? From both sides. So adding that element and adding that relationship manager piece has really helped bridge that gap for us and really help with retention. So.
In full disclosure, I use your services, right?
Yes, we love having you.
Thank you. And I actually work with 2 virtual assistants because of the needs that I have. And then I also have the relationship manager. And it was funny. I think it was yesterday or today, I got an email from Renee, who is mine, asking me, hey, how are you? How are your holidays? Everything going okay? Do you need anything? And I have to say, I think we'll go ahead and talk about agency versus freelance while we're going. But I thought it was really great when you introduced me to her and then also to my VAs, simply because I have been in a freelance relationship before, and I'm not saying anything's wrong with them. I still do some of them, but they are different to manage. So when I am managing, and by freelance, I mean, I'm hiring directly somebody to be on my team versus going with an agency such as yours, right? And so I have some freelance, and I mean, they're great, but I've also had some that were not great. Just, it's not always a great fit, or the needs of the business change. And so the fit no longer is the same fit that it was at the beginning on all sides, right? So it's very natural and normal. But it is different when you have no intermediary. It's different, like you said, when there's a radio silence on either side that you don't know how to bridge, and there's nobody there to help bridge it. And I appreciate that about the model that you've created, because I mean, I've got great VAs. I can talk to them. They're great support. It's like, I really like who I work with. But knowing that if there was an issue or a problem that the two of us could not solve, there was somebody else that I could say, help me solve this, or that they could say, help me solve this with Michele, right? Coming from both sides. So it's almost like we both have an advocate between us that I think adds, and what it does is it keeps me from having to manage some of the details of the VA that I would have to manage in a freelance environment.
Yes, that's very true. Yeah, there's a lot of pieces, and I think it's probably not something that somebody thinks of right off the bat. But so you do have, like you said, if there's an issue, there's somebody there to help. But even as far as let's say for whatever reason, like you said, the needs change, or for some reason the VA ends up having to go a different direction, right? Like this year's a perfect example. I mean, look at how many people went from, probably working full time to also becoming full-time teachers to their kids, or, people's situations just change and there's not a lot that you can do about that. And so like what we do in that case is we have transition plans that are in place, and, we help make that transition to a new VA. And we make it as seamless as possible. And again, that's been a lot of trial and error over the years. And you're not responsible for paying them or vetting them, and like you said earlier, like going through like tons of resumes. And so there's a lot of benefits to it, but there's also a cost that comes to that, because there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes to keep all those wheels running. So that's definitely a trade-off, and I think it really depends on the type of position that you need, the type of support that you need. And, like if you only need somebody a couple hours a day, you probably could, a freelance person
manage
might,
some of that more
might work a little bit better than going through an agency. But
well, I'll tell you this, I like, even when I hired, 2 assistants through your team, it was, I need you and I need you on Monday. Like I talked to you, we're friends.
Yes.
So I talked to you on a Saturday. So I know I got a little preferential treatment because I called you in tears saying, I need somebody now, just because of some changes in my own business and I need them quickly. And so on Monday I had 2 teammates, but I mean, we did talk, well, by Tuesday, you and I met officially on Monday. And by Tuesday I had people that you were already giving me, that we were already starting to hand over standard operating procedures and getting them up to speed. But what I never had really considered until you just said it, Laura. So it's a really great point. I'm glad that you brought it up. Let's say that one of my VAs did need to take a step back and, I don't know, a life change for whatever reason, they had to take a step back from the role that they were working with. If it was freelance, which I've had that happen, I now have nobody in that position, and I've got to start looking for somebody, finding somebody, vetting some. I've got to start that entire process all over again. Whereas working with you, you're going to say, hey, this is something that we support. We're going to help move you over here. Here's some people we've already vetted. You're going to let me be part of the process, but you're going to help manage that behind the scenes. And that was one of the reasons. First, we're friends, but second of all, I knew that I needed that going forward, because I couldn't take another disruption of having kind of a blanket pulled out from under me with a main assistant in one moment, in one fell swoop. I couldn't do that, right? I needed a plan. And so working with an agency gave me that. And again, I have some others that are freelance, but those positions are the ones that I would say in some cases, not in all, but in some cases, if we needed to do something else, I would just go find somebody else, but they're not instrumental in the actual day-to-day operations of every single thing that I do. Right. And I think that makes a difference to your point.
Right.
So I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that's another bonus there. All right. So let's jump back a minute. I want to talk about, on your team, you have executive assistants, you have virtual assistants. there is a lot of conversation out there right now, and we're seeing a lot of acronyms thrown around. You know, we're a country that loves our acronyms. And so we see VA and we see OBM, and VA is virtual assistant, OBM is online business manager. And I know you and I even had this conversation when I called you back in April, March, April timeframe, when we were really talking about what I needed at that point in time. And we were looking through the job description to even make sure that a virtual assistant was what I needed versus an online business manager. I mean, can you explain the difference between the two of those, just at the basic level? Like, what is the difference between a VA and an OBM, so that we can even make a decision, what do we need for our company? Like, so the listeners out there, the interior designers and workrooms, and, you know, all of my listeners that are out there can go, oh, that's the difference. And, oh, this is the one that I need.
I think one thing too, that's important to think about is, typically when you work with an OBM, they need a virtual assistant. So an OBM is basically somebody who is going to help you with the entire overview of your business. They need to get into every little piece of your business, and they need to understand how it works. They will help put the processes together and basically connect the dots and help you with that workflow. And that is their, that's their like high level skill set, right? And then in order to do a lot of the implementation, a virtual assistant will be with them, or somebody on your team to implement the pieces that are going to go along with putting these processes and things together. So a virtual assistant is more of, I'd say, your support staff, where the OBM is basically I look at them as, right underneath the owner. However.
So we would look at them like in Traction, like being the integrator.
Yes.
Or the manager, yes. If we were looking at it, they are managing and
all the
integrating.
pieces.
Right. The strategy up here, the vision, and then they are helping put it in place. They're sitting below, the OBM is sitting below the owner, if you will, of the company, us. And then they're making sure that the vision is worked out in all the separate areas. And then the assistants in whatever role, technical assistant, virtual assistant, whatever type of assistant, we have multiples in our companies. They're the ones that are actually doing the
doers. Yep.
Implementation.
Right.
Okay. Okay. All right. So that makes sense. And so for most companies, at some point, if we were even to look at eMyth, you're talking technician, manager, visionary, CEO, entrepreneur. Yes. And so we all kind of need those levels. So the virtual assistant would be the technician level.
Correct.
If we were looking at an eMyth
That's
model.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Or an implementer and a traction model. Okay. So with that, tell us a little bit about how would we know that we're ready to hire a virtual assistant?
So I have a lot of people that ask me that question, like, when is the right time? And I can tell you the wrong time is when you're in over your head. So the best time is and I understand in the very beginning, it's usually a budget. That's usually the biggest issue, right? Is money. It all comes down to the dollar. But a lot of times you cannot grow any bigger than the time that you have to dedicate. So when you see yourself stretching yourself so thin and, putting in an insane amount of hours and you're not getting anywhere, you need to start delegating to somebody. And that is, to me, that's a really good indicator. So you don't want to wait until you're drowning, because then what happens, I've seen it happen. People try to offload everything at once and it's a disaster. You want to start, my biggest thing is to start with repetitive tasks. Start with things that you do on a regular basis, because that helps keep someone engaged with you. Because I see, again, sometimes what I see is people will want to hire a virtual assistant. They really don't take the time to think it out too much. And they just are giving little spurts of work here and there. And it's very hard for somebody to learn somebody's business, to be engaged on a regular basis, if they're only doing little tiny bits and pieces. So repetitive work, even if it's a couple hours a week to get started, it's still something that you are not doing anymore and you are trusting somebody else to do. And then as you see the fruits of that, then you can start adding to it. But I always say start small, but start as soon as you can.
That is a really good point. I know when I was first looking to hire a virtual assistant, one of the things that I did, because it was, again, you're balancing your time and your money. And my thing was, I didn't want to hire somebody and then feel like I was wasting their time because I didn't know what to give them to do. And so to your point, some of the exercises that I went through before I hired that first time was I started asking myself, I'm a list maker. I'm a task writer down of everything. So I've got lists everywhere. I've got an Asana list. I got lists, and I make the big joke. My list have babies at night, so I have bigger lists the next morning. But I remember looking at it and asking myself when I was going through the process, I've got to get something off my plate. So the way I'm going to start is I'm going to look and say, if I never have to do that again, would I be okay with that? Write it over here on the list. And so I just started writing some things down that I thought that I could hand off. And again, I think this is important, Laura. We're not saying things that you want to hand off and get done in a junky way. We're saying, what can you hand off that with training and correct operating procedures that you could trust that somebody else could do on your behalf, right? So we don't want to forget there's a trust building. There is operating procedures building. Like there's work to be done. It's not a dump and run type of thing. But when I started making those lists, then I could start to see these things are more marketing related or these things are more admin related. And I could start grouping. And then I started asking myself, what's the next thing that I need? And so, I hired somebody to help with the marketing. And then I hired an assistant to help with my automation and all the back end. And then I made sure that I hired somebody to help me doing the virtual assistant, more admin type things of sending out my newsletter, sending out those repetitive things that, I create the content for, but I'm not the one having to go sit down and necessarily retype it in and schedule it out and, do those things that can easily be handed off to somebody else who's jazzed over doing that. Like that's what they enjoy doing. So it was a good process for me to write it down. Even now, I just hired somebody in an OBM manner and I'm also, or an OBM role. I'm looking for another type of position in my company. And I just keep writing down what else can I get off of my plate and how does it start to look? And then how can I give enough work for them to be able to do it? So, and I agree with you. I think when you're overwhelmed is when you need them, but you actually needed them before.
Yes.
You need them to be ready because if you hire during the middle of the overwhelm and you don't take time to onboard them, I've done that too. That's horrible for everybody. They can't help you. You're frustrated. You think it's their fault. It's really your own fault. And it's just a hot mess.
Because that's a really good point though, Michele. It does take time on the client side to make sure that you dedicate time in the beginning, like you said, to onboard them properly. To make sure that they know what your expectations are, that you have a communication plan in place. Like, okay, if I have a question, I need to know how to get a hold of you to get an answer. How many times are we going to connect or meet in the beginning so that we make sure so that I can check in. Okay, I did this task. Did I do it right? You need to take that time to review it, go over it, and then, offload one thing after another. And the best way to do that is a list. I'm a huge list person myself. So.
Well, even in my, the aim with intent methodology, which is what I teach in my program, the scaling program, whether it is a virtual assistant or an employee who sits at the desk beside you, I'm really a firm believer that we need to hire however and whoever we hire with a very detailed plan. And that plan is, here's the job description. Here's what we expect: 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, because that helps you decide how to onboard. I'm all about an onboarding strategy. And that's what you were really great at with your team when I started working with, like, here's our strategy, here's what we go through, here's our process. And I know that, when I started working with the virtual assistants from your team, it was very much, I'm not dumping everything on you on day one. Here's what the first things I need you to do. Here are the procedures that we have going with them. Let's tweak these procedures for the two of us to work, because they may have worked a little differently with my other admin support, because she worked a little differently. And I think one of the other really great things that I found when I started working with Paige on your team was saying to her, okay, so here's the way we've done it in the past, but if you have a better way that you are more comfortable with, that will support you and me and my business and my clients, I am open to hearing it. And she came back to me and suggested Airtable for a process that we manage.
Oh, she loves Airtable. Yep.
Yeah. And she said, this is what I've done with other clients where I'm doing similar work to what I'm doing for you. I think that we can make this work and it will be efficient and effective, and everybody's going to have the information they need. Because I think in the past, we were trying to run it by an Excel spreadsheet, and then we were using Dropbox. We still kept some of the structure, but we shifted it. And I really appreciated that, because I didn't have time to go sit down and say, how do I make that process better? I just was trying to get through the process because I had bigger work to do. I had different work to do. And so giving her, after the trust was built, giving her the autonomy to say, tell me if there's a better way. And she did, and we implemented it, and she ran with it. And it's beautiful. I mean, I'm just like, oh, click, 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 click. Here's what I'd like to see. And next thing I know, she's got it built out to do that. And I think that is the value of hiring the right person, is that they're bringing a value add to your company. They're not sucking up your resources. They are actually providing you with input and with resources and with information and strategy for the role that they have. She wasn't coming in to give me strategy on my marketing. That wasn't what she was hired for. I mean, if she had it, I'd take it. But she's coming in to give me strategy on the processes that she's running for my company. And that's when I think a good thing to know about the person you're hiring is, are they just going to do what you tell them to do, right? Or ask them to do, or put in the job description? Or are they actually going to help you enhance what you do because they love what they do?
Right. And there's a big difference between that, like a list checker, huge, right? Just a task doer, or somebody who's proactive, who will go out there and, like you said, just try to find a bigger, better way to do things for you and the two of you to work together, or your team, like in your case, your team to work together.
Right. And so I think when whether we call an agency or whether we freelance, whatever we do, when we need that virtual assistant, it's about really having an idea of what do we need them to do? What are, like you said earlier, what are our expectations of this position? I always love how are we going to communicate, and when are we going to touch base? And if I also, this was a big one to me, and I remember having this conversation with you. When we get something wrong, what are we going to do? Like, how do we react if something goes wrong? Because we're all going to make mistakes. What do we do about that? And one of my big pet peeves is for somebody on my team to do something wrong and not own it. Like, my whole tagline is, if you own it, you can change it. So just own it. Like, I can tell you, I make mistakes all the time. I'll own them. And so I love when the people on my team own it. Right. And then the next conversation piece is, this is usually what happens. Okay, we made a mistake. And this is where I love when they say, okay, so let's walk back to the operating procedures and see if we need to update that. Or let's go look at the checklist that goes with these operating procedures to see if we need to add another checkpoint. Like, that's how you walk back to see, how do we keep it from happening again? Sometimes things just fall through the cracks. But again, that way of thinking, that's not like oh, well, so sad. I've gotten that before. Right. Oops, bad. And I'm like, okay, no. I need more than just too bad. I need, why did it happen? What's the root of the problem? What did we miss? Were we just overwhelmed? Like, what was it, so that we can not repeat it? Right. And so looking and finding that, which is what I love about too, the way that you vet. Tell us a little bit about how you vet to see who's even going to be on your team? Like, what are some of the things that you look for in a good virtual assistant?
So our vetting process starts with an online application. And then once they get through the application, there's an assessment based on the position that they're applying for. And I can't tell you how many people don't even want to be bothered with the assessment. So many people just are like, just look at my resume. And it's like, no, if you really want to work with our team, you have to submit, right? You have to submit your resume, but you also have to take the time to fill out the application, and you have to take the time to do the assessment. Our assessments, we hand grade, and they have to have 85% or higher in order to even move on to an interview. And then we have a 2-part interview process. So, my recruiter, she handles the first interview, and then she'll decide if they should move on or they shouldn't. And then when they come to me, we have a completely different, set of questions that we ask. Some are the same questions, which is funny because you and I talked about this, because what we like to do is see if the answer is going to change, or, are we getting like similar responses? And then we meet to, decide what we're going to do. And then, there's a third interview where we just kind of go over, the way that we operate, and can they do they agree to that? Like, for us, a big thing is turning in your hours every Friday to your client and sending that like weekly wrap-up report. That's really big for us because we promise our clients that. Our VAs have to be able to follow through with that. Logging in hours, things like that. And so that's the process. It takes a little bit of time. It's not, we don't bring on people quickly. Let's put it that way.
I really appreciate that too. And I do love your process. And I think again, that's one of the things that if I hired freelance, I'd have to be, okay, I need an accounting of this. I need an accounting of that. I'd have to be the one to manage and to chase it down and to go get it. Right. Whereas you handle all of that with your agency behind the scenes. But it is nice to get that Friday report that says, here's how our time was spent.
Yes.
Because what's good for me is to be able to say, okay, here's how much more I think I need. Like, I can plan. I know the speed at which each person works. I have an understanding about what it takes to get XYZ done. And so now I can start to look at it as a multiplier of more work.
Right.
Or less work. Or however, or less of whatever I need. And so that I really appreciate. So I love that you've built that in. Let me ask you this. When you do your assessments, I'm assuming the assessment in some ways they're uniform across all positions, but in some ways I bet you must have some different questions or things that you look at based on the role that they're applying to.
Yes, we do. So like, for example, for our executive assistant position and the legal assistant too, there's just certain tasks that they have to do within there that a lot of people just refuse to do. We've actually had people say, just look at my resume, or I don't know how to do this and I'm not going to go any further. Like, that'll be actually something that they say in there. So for us, it's good because we know who's really dedicated and who's not, but we'll have them, create calendar invites and upload them to, one of our test calendars. We'll have them do a sample greeting, when they're talking on the phone. We'll have them, say something, or what is your response to like this question? How would you respond to something like this? And that gives us, right off the bat, it gives us an idea of the level of professionalism, that we're dealing with. And as far as like digital marketing or social media, we have them, create certain pieces around an event that we change throughout the assessment. And so that they have to think pretty quick on their feet, but be able to put something together to upload. So it's always taking that extra step. It's not just, if it's the creative position, it's geared around, the creativity piece. Sure. And the other one, like for an executive position, it's geared around the professionalism of how are you going to respond to clients.
And see, I think even all of that are all the things that need to be done in an interview process anyway. But most of us in a one-to-one, number one, I wouldn't think on my own. I would think more now about it, having had multiple VAs over the last 10 years. But I didn't think about it at the beginning. At the beginning, I was like, oh, you can do that. Great. Come on in. And I didn't realize that when somebody told me, I would ask for pieces of their work. It wasn't like I went into it completely blind, but I certainly didn't go into it as detailed as I do now.
And we
right?
learned that the hard way too. Yes. People are like, oh yeah, I've done that before. Well, doing it before and being an expert at it are two completely different things. Yes.
All right. So let me ask you this then. How do you, so when we talked about being prepared, one of the things I always ask people to do is to try to save 3 months of salary or whatever they're paying to bring somebody on. So for example, if I hired 2 of your VAs at one time because of just the different things that I had to do, but I wanted to make sure I had 3 months of that fee set aside. Yes. Because the onboarding there, while yours came on and they were, we still had, I want to say like a 2 or 3 week overlap with my prior assistant for us to get everything transitioned properly and get them up to date, which means for 2 to 3 weeks, I was paying double. Right. And I also couldn't expect them to be immediately as productive as the person walking out when it was all new to them. They were doing it the first time and they were learning it. And so really not just planning the time to go through a process. And listen, whether they're hiring freelance or through an agency, there's still time. Yes. They still have to talk to you. They've still got to talk to the person. They've still got to do the onboard. There's still time involved. But I think building that a minimum of 3 months into reserves to be able to do it actually gives you the ability to breathe a little more, that you can pay to help that person get up to speed. It's going to take them longer at the beginning than after they get into kind of, they understand the operating procedures. They've created a rhythm. They know what they're doing and how they're doing it. And so I think it's about budgeting for time to bring them on and budgeting for money to bring them on. Would you agree that that is a good practice, Laura, or do you have something else that you would add to that?
No, I think that's a really important piece of it too. I know so many times that's what holds people back too, is, kind of being afraid to take that leap to, your business is your baby. And so the first person that you bring on, you're trusting them to do certain things on your behalf, and that's not easy to do. So you've got that coupled with maybe it is financially really difficult for them to pay to have somebody. So having that in reserves, because I've seen people back away because they just were not prepared, to really have that payment every month to have somebody help them. So like you said, having that reserves, because it is going to take a little bit of time, like to be realistic, like the first 30 days should really be just about learning how you guys are going to work together, what's going to be your best form of communication, starting to learn processes, and we really don't even say that until like that 3rd month, should the person be working completely independently. And, because you need to take those baby steps. I mean, a lot of times it happens sooner rather than later, but like you said, if financially you're prepared for it, you are going to be so much further ahead of the game than if you're scrambling every month to try to come up with the money to pay somebody. That's just going to cause undue stress on all parties. Because that's the other thing I've seen is, and I understand working within a budget, but sometimes, VAs have to stop working because there's, they can only do so many hours in a month, and then they have to wait until the money is there again. So this way you have a nice flow in the beginning, and then you'll start seeing some benefits too within those first, 90 days.
Right. Sure. Well, and I have with all of mine. I mean, I don't think I've ever had one that I didn't have benefit quickly, but it wasn't full speed on day one. And so assuming that it will be is really an unrealistic expectation. And sometimes I've seen, well, he or she didn't do what I needed them to do. Well, did you give them enough time to understand it? Did you make yourself available enough to get them updated? I always use my 5 E's. Did you educate them? Did you equip them? Did you empower them? Did you set expectations? And then did you encourage them? Because if you didn't do those 5 things, like, how could they have been successful? And this doesn't matter, again, whether it's an employee or a
Right.
subcontractor. It's like, how do I help you do the best that you can do to help me?
Exactly.
Right. And it takes time and it takes money. And I also just found that by doing that, I almost can breathe through we're going to be a little slower. We're not going to get it done, but it helps me prioritize what absolutely has to get
Right.
done versus what is I'd like to get it done. And what then can I add on once I see what you can do and handle? How can I add on more? What else can I give you?
Right. Right.
So being prepared is huge, I
It
think.
is that, and I mean that really goes along with everything. I feel the more prepared, the more planning you can do. What is that saying? 10 hours of planning saves, I forget how, there's a saying, I just saw it again recently, but the more you plan, the better off you're going to be and the less time you're going to actually have to spend doing.
So as we wrap up, I'd love to ask you this last question. What is kind of the process that you go through when you are, like, let's say that one of the listeners said, okay, I'm ready for a VA. I've done some of this work. I've got some money. I know that I'm in need, and I know that I'm quickly approaching that point of overwhelm when it's going to be almost like too late, but much needed. And so I'm going to give Laura and her team a call. How do you, I'm going to say, interview the client to figure out what a good fit is? What do you look for when you are, so you've already done all the vetting for the people that are on your team. How do you then couple them with new clients who are calling? What are some of the things that you look for to see if there will be a match?
So we actually we have an outline that we go over, and we ask all different questions to the client. One of the big ones is, have you worked with a virtual assistant before? Because we like to know, do they have realistic expectations of working with somebody? So that might mean if they haven't worked with somebody, a VA, before, we will tend to put them with a more experienced virtual assistant because they will know how to guide that client. If it's more, oh yeah, I've worked with them, for years, I'm making a change, or what have you, that person doesn't have to be, I feel, quite as advanced as far as how long they've worked with somebody, because this person's used to the relationship and they understand how it works. And then, we just we get a really, really thorough job description, things that they know that they need to start with. And then we also like to see what they think they might need in the future, because that also goes along with the pairing process. We use a DISC assessment for, our VAs. And so we talk through those with the client, like, okay, what type of support is going to be best for you? So we like to know, are you a visionary? And sometimes they'll have a DISC assessment themselves that they'll send us, which is extremely helpful because that really helps with the pairing. But so we really go through, the personality is a big part, the expectations, and then obviously the job description and matching the skills to that. So, I always say, if, let's just say, for example, sometimes people come to us with these really odd pieces of software that they use that, maybe we haven't heard of before. But let's just say it's a CRM, for example. If you've worked within one or two CRMs before, it's usually really easy to jump in and learn something quickly. So that is the one thing, because I know sometimes people, they will come to us and say they have to know this software. To find somebody that knows that exact combination is typically difficult. So as long as they know how to work within those types of software, then we feel there's other pieces to the match we can make.
Yeah, I've found the same thing, that not everybody has the exact tech stack you're looking for. And so, if you know how to do, like you said, even Asana, then you know how to do maybe Trello, and then maybe Basecamp is, you can start to walk through them. And if you know one, you can pick up another. So that's awesome. Laura, if somebody was looking to find out more about you, your company, your offerings, where can they go? Where are you hanging out online?
All right. So our website is elitevirtualassist.com. They can also find me and connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Laura Licursi. I'm in the Cleveland, Ohio area. And we're also, we're everywhere. We're on Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest. So we have we're on all the channels other than Snapchat. So
I hear you. Are you doing TikTok videos
no,
yet?
I haven't got there yet. No, I laugh though because my son is just his head is always buried in these TikTok videos.
I know it.
Some
I
of
know
them
it.
are pretty funny.
I told somebody the other day, I said, I wonder if I need to start doing TikTok videos on how to balance your checkbook and how to check your financials and how to grow your company. I said, I got to come up with a TikTok
Yeah.
dance, teach that. And maybe people will pay attention to it.
Make
So
it fun,
I'm
right?
like you, I'm not there. That's right. That's right. We'll have fun if we're doing our
Yeah.
financials. They can be fun too. So, well, Laura, I really appreciate it. I will have links to all of your information in the show notes. I do want to give you a shout out on your LinkedIn. You put a lot of really good information and articles and case studies and all types of things out there. And so I really want to encourage people not only to check out what you have on your website, but to follow you on LinkedIn and to really watch what you put out there because it's good information.
Thank you. Thanks.
It's educational in nature. And so I really appreciate that and enjoy what you have to say out there.
Great.
But thank you for being a great friend and for running such a great agency. You and that Paige and Janae, who I were, they saved me, and I really enjoy having them on my team and having Renee to check in, and and then having you, knowing how you're managing and running your own company it makes me comfortable knowing that I'm working with a company that cares so much about people and about bringing in the right people and about making the right connections. And just the whole way you have it structured has brought me a lot of peace during a year of great turmoil and a year, for all of us, and just put me in a position to be able to hold on and keep moving and to do it with ease. And that's what we're all looking for when we hire in these positions, is we're looking to be able to do more of what we do really, really well with ease. And you and your team absolutely 100% hands down have provided that to me. And I thank you.
Well, thank you, Michele. And I am so grateful for you, for your friendship, and for being part of our EVA team and our EVA family. We love working with you. I know Paige loves working with you. She always says it. So she looks up to you.
She's a sweetheart.
Yeah.
It's enjoyable. Well, thank you again for sharing and shedding some light on a virtual assistant, what they are, when we need it, how I'll go about some of the questions even to ask. I think that this has been a very rich conversation, and I'm so glad that we had it.
Thanks, Michele. I really appreciate it.
Have a great day.
You too.
Okay. I'm so thankful to Laura for joining us and helping us unpack the world of hiring a VA. Many clients who come to me have some support already, or they're in desperate need of it quickly to grow and scale their business. If you need help determining your next hire and you want support for your decision-making as you grow, check out our Work With Me page over at scarletthreadconsulting.com and then fill out a discovery form. I'd love to be able to chat with you and see if we can support you as you also get support to run your business. Make the choice to be profitable with your time, your energy, and your money, because profit doesn't happen by accident.